we have almost a third of the tables that are filled by law firms today who are been volunteering and trying to help vets and are taking on some of these cases pro bono. And let's give them a hand. All those incredible number of law firms. So my quick little job is to give reflections on 40 years in about 5 minutes. Wow, so I'm going to try to give it a shot here. Just try to bear with me. I won't talk rapidly either. I'll try to cover some of these high points here. But I do want to say that, 40 years ago in 1974, late 1974, 1975, when these 6 volunteers were working at the vet center and realized that they needed to really help folks and they needed to get out of those walls and get into the community where the issues were. And that was sort of the beginning of our service and of SWORDS. And they started sort of turning their swords into plowshares by doing those things. We set up our first nonprofit, storefront was at Turk and Mason. Today we're at 7th and Howard. We have an outreach program. Today we have a drop-in center. We had back in '74 an incarcerated vet program. Now we have the Cover Project, which is in San Bruno Jail. We had a job program then. We got a job program now. We recognized early on the impact of war and the invisible wounds. There was no such thing as post-traumatic stress disorder, but we sure as hell knew we had issues and problems, and we knew that the war was inside of us. And that's what we did in '74 to try to make people aware of that and change the system. We're doing it today. We have, and all those issues that were present there of recovering from war exist today. Those veterans who come back from Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever, and deal with the stress of war and know that they need to start with helping themselves. And even though we have this good climate, this, quote, sea of goodwill, their most important comrades are going to be those of us in this room who've been through it. And so never should a generation turn its back on those who need it most, and we're not going to do that. When those founders got together, and they realized that this war was, although they were home, the war was inside of them. And they realized they had to, this is sort of a profound issue they were trying to address. Because at the time, no one wanted to have anything to do with the Vietnam War, those who fought it. They could not separate the war from the warrior. And so they were inspired by several medics, and we all love combat medics. Those who have been in combat know how much we loved our medics. And those founders, they turned to these gentlemen, these former medics who also had their fill of war, and they called themselves twice-born men because they were trying to get at the inside of that war. And one of them was a decorated medic, a little gnome-type guy who chain-smoked, wounded several times as a corpsman. His name was Jack McCloskey. And another gentleman was Rob Baudouin, both medics in Vietnam. And I want to, on this side of the table, Jack's no longer with us, but his family is here, and I want to acknowledge the family of Jack McCloskey. And also Rob Baudouin, who's here. And they took that biblical quote, where they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up war against nation. I'm not saying this right. Let me just make sure I say it correctly. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. They weren't afraid of that term, and they went with it, and they decided to make a difference in people's lives. And that same approach, that approach of not being afraid of who you're serving, not being afraid of the community, meeting the vets where they were, is the very approach we take today. And it just seems, it stands to reason. Why would you take another approach? Why would you go inside an institution when the pain was outside, was there? Go where the pain is, where the need is. That seemed second nature to all of us. And that's what we did, and that's what we continue to do. And I think that's what keeps us, even though we have no longer 12 employees, we have 160 employees, and we have many housing sites, and we're making a big difference because we believe that we're the real deal. And the best creed is a creed that is when you go out there and you meet your vets in the street and you take care of them, and we've always done that. So I'm very proud of that. I'm just proud that we've stayed true to that mission. I do want to thank several folks who are involved in, right now, we're so lucky to be in San Francisco, and people say, they question the patriotism of San Francisco. San Francisco has been incredibly supportive of swords, incredibly supportive of veterans. Our housing is on the Presidio, it's on Treasure Island. Recently, the mayor is going to make available, rooms, buildings specifically for veterans. And recently, the San Francisco Homes for Heroes team, which was determined to house street veterans. And they're here today, the San Francisco's Office of Hope. I want to notably Bevan Duffy and Amanda and the Human Services Agency, Joyce Crom and Megan, and the San Francisco Housing Authority, Velma Navarro, Brilliant Corners, and of course the VA Medical Center. I don't know if there's pictures here or not, but in May of 1977, Max Cleland, who was then the Secretary of the VA, came to visit Swords to Plowshares at 944 Market Street. And it was really a pivotal time in the lives of Vietnam veterans. The issues of PTSD trying to be recognized, the issue of Agent Orange, the issue of the Vet Center, the issue of all the street vets who were out there. And Max Cleland, who, by the way, was not the usual appointee. President Carter made a big change in terms of who he appointed. He appointed a double amputee, Max Cleland, who knew everything about war trauma. He came to Swords back in 1977. It was a big moment. We actually have photos of that. And it wasn't until 32 years later that another VA administrator came to Swords, and that was Eric Shinseki came to our academy program. But I just think we've been able to, create the tension, the pressure, the interest, and we've been able to work together. It's not just us, obviously, and folks who are in this room who've all done all this incredibly good work, because it takes all of us, right? It really does take all of us. Thank you very much.